Okay, well, welcome everyone. Good morning. My name is Nick Denomey, as Laurie just mentioned, and today I'm here with Kyle to share our research. But for me specifically, we'll be sharing the research on my study, the experiences of camouflaging in Canadian autistic women. So a brief overview of the presentation today. We'll quickly go over an introduction of the study, myself, and also a land acknowledgement. We'll review some of the literature on camouflaging and quality of life in the autistic research, go over the methodology of the study, the results and discussion, implications, and then if we have some time, which we probably will, we'll have some time for some questions. Now, I'd like to start off this presentation in a really good way by honoring the land this study was completed on and the land in which I'm speaking to you from today. I had the absolute privilege to study, work, build relationships, and grow as an individual on Treaty 6 territory in Edmonton, Alberta. Although I'm a recent settler on Algonquin territory in Ottawa, Ontario, I witnessed the beauty this land offers and the opportunity it provides everyone to learn from others, particularly those that came before us. In being accountable for actions and promises, we as a community can grow in our ability to practice humility, be trustworthy, and honor those that came before us. Now, before I begin describing this entire study, this study would not be possible without the funding of Autism Research Center, Autism Edmonton, and SSHRC. I would also like to give a special thank you to Dr. Heather Brown, who I see is here today, Dr. Veronica Smith, and to the 4 women who consisted of the Autistic Community Partnership. Now, a couple notes on language throughout this presentation. Regarding language, Botha and colleagues highlight the importance of choosing and using the right language, as it can sometimes be the difference between experiencing stigmatization, dehumanization, and violence. When in doubt, though, always ask those who you are working with what language they prefer. Therefore, since all of the participants used identity-first language, I'll be using the term autistic throughout this presentation. However, I do acknowledge and respect those that prefer person-first language. Now, regarding an autism definition, autism is different to everyone because the experiences of autism are unique. You know, over the past century, autism has been conceptualized in so many different ways that it's sometimes difficult for us to ascertain which one we should use in research. As Botha et al. Suggest, always use the definition that causes the least amount of harm and prioritizes the most value attached to being identified as such. I personally use a neurodiversity lens to define autism as different, not less, and as a constellation rather than a spectrum. However, I find Jim Sinclair's definition of autism is a great example too. So he states, autism isn't something a person has or a shell that a person is trapped inside. There's no normal child hidden behind the autism. Autism is a way of being. It is pervasive. It colors every experience, every sensation, perception, thought, emotion, and encounter, every aspect of existence. It is not possible to separate the autism from the person, and if it were possible, the person you'd have left would not be the same person you started with. Now, a brief introduction about me. I completed my undergraduate degree in psychology and youth and children's studies at Wilfrid Laurier University in Ontario. And this is where really my interest in autistic well-being grew exponentially. I came to the University of Alberta and completed a master's degree in special education with the thesis research you're about to hear about today. Currently, I'm pursuing a master's of public health, as Laurie mentioned, in health promotion at the University of Alberta, with the intent to bridge gaps between research and practice, ultimately for the improvement of health in autistic communities. Within my work experience, I've also been very dedicated to supporting the autistic community in improving health and addressing health inequities and inequalities. I still support autistic well-being as a respite worker for autistic youth, and I plan to continue using my neurotypical privilege to support autistic community members in initiatives they deem important to their health. Now, moving on to a review of the current literature. First of all, we all camouflage, whether it be in a restaurant, in a first date, with our friends, or we may even be camouflaging right now in this meeting. In this study, I defined camouflaging as such. So camouflaging, also referred to as masking, is often used by autistic and non-autistic individuals in an attempt to blend into their social environments, such as mimicking the behaviors or appearances of others. Now, the literature has suggested that camouflaging does have some benefits, such as leading to better academic and employment outcomes. However, camouflaging has been recognized to have some consequences. Livingston and colleagues found that camouflaging was associated with increased levels of stress, anxiety, and depression, while other researchers like Cassidy et al. In 2019 highlight that there's a relationship between increased camouflaging and increased suicidal ideations. Of course, these benefits and consequences are only visible when there are changes in quality of life. And according to Mason et al. In 2018, the quality of life in autistic individuals is already lower than those who are not autistic. So to sum it all up, there's been plenty of research on camouflaging in autistic individuals and plenty of research on quality of life in autistic individuals. However, to date, there's very little to no literature assessing the subjective experiences of camouflaging in Canada. With that being said, the purpose of this qualitative study was to gain a deeper understanding of the camouflaging experiences in Canadian autistic women and the implications camouflaging can have on their quality of life. Specifically, 2 research questions that I addressed in this study are as follows. What is the experience of camouflaging in autistic women? And to what extent does camouflaging impact the quality of life in autistic women? Now, to begin describing how this study was completed, I wanted to start by outlining the context of the study. So this study was completed during the COVID-19 pandemic, a time when people's lives were essentially turned upside down due to public health restrictions and social isolation impeding routine and social interactions. All of the study tasks were also completed online. So this study used 2 methodologies. The first, interpretative phenomenological analysis, or IPA, was chosen for several reasons. First, it's grounded in social constructivism, which Cresswell and Poth highlight that experience is structured by our individual social, cultural, and historical lives. By using this approach, my understanding of camouflaging could be broadened, as we are now approaching the understanding of camouflaging from other people's perspectives, rather than just my own. Also, IPA views these unique experiences as expertise. The double empathy problem proposed by Damien Milton in 2012 suggests that the diagnostic social deficit attributed to autism, specifically having difficulties understanding those who are different, is just as applicable to autistic individuals as it is to non-autistic individuals. By using IPA, the expertise of each individual can be valued as the participants share their experiences and the researcher is reflexive in their interpretation. The second methodology that I used is community-based participatory research. And I did this by partnering with 4 autistic women to help develop and complete the study. There were several reasons why I chose to work with the ACP, but one of the main reasons was to ensure that this research is making active contributions to a more directed, impactful stream of research for the autistic community. So a little bit more on the ACP. As the ACP and I worked on the study, I used a model of collaborative practice, where all of the study materials were brought through the group, received feedback, and was incorporated into the materials. This process was ongoing until the ACP and I agreed that the materials were appropriate and representative for the participants in the study. On the right, you'll see a brief overview of the responsibilities and study tasks. As you can see, the ACP was involved in many aspects of the study, including the development of materials, review of the member check-in presentations, and the review of the final data presented in the paper and also in this presentation. Now, moving along with the methodology, 5 autistic women aged 18 to 35 years old were recruited via poster advertisements for this study. All of the participants were asked to complete 2 to 3 camouflaging journal entries, a brief demographic survey, 1 to 2 semi-structured interviews, and the social responsiveness scale. All of the demographic data can be found on the right of the slide. Of note, many of the participants were located in different provinces at the time of data collection. All of the participants were in school during the study period, and several of them had co-occurring conditions such as anxiety and depression. So once the semi-structured interview data was collected, it was transcribed and anonymized. It's important to note that aligning with the idiographic approach of IPA analysis, all cases were analyzed separately before being compared to each other. First, I read and listened to the interviews, noting and commenting questions, linguistic choices, and how they described aspects of their camouflaging experiences. I then took those comments and gradually developed these emergent themes. This approach was done several times until I felt the emergent themes were representative of the unique experiences of camouflaging. Then I connected those emergent themes to create subordinate themes that better captured the larger scope of the camouflaging experience shared by each participant. Finally, after analyzing the data idiographically or individually, the findings were compared across the cases, and these findings are such. Now, as I move on to discuss the findings, it's really important to keep in mind that the camouflaging experience of the participants is always at the center of the findings. We'll first look at the inner circle of the 5 themes, answering the first research question. Following that, we'll look at answering the second research question, which highlights the impacts of camouflaging on quality of life, 4 domains of quality of life. The first theme we'll be discussing is how the phenomenon of camouflaging was described by the participants. To the participants, camouflaging was described as a way to separate themselves from their autistic identity. The participants also described camouflaging as subconscious and adaptive. Finally, all the participants shared that camouflaging is a privilege because it allows them to succeed in a social world that privileges neurotypical minds. They were all aware that others may not be able to camouflage as well as they do, and this can result in them missing out on some of the benefits of camouflaging. The second theme, motivations for camouflaging, brings to attention that motivations can be organized as internal or external. For internal motivations, avoidance is avoiding the negative emotions that come when one does not camouflage, while the motivation to fit in is the feeling of belonging when they do decide to camouflage. Many of the participants also shared that they will, in some cases, camouflage for the benefits of others, such as in a classroom, reducing stimming so that other people around them can focus, or to make themselves feel safe. As the Venn diagram depicts, sometimes these internal and external motivations of camouflaging will overlap. The next theme, learning to camouflage, highlights an iterative and bidirectional process. By learning the expectations of those around them, either through observation, media, or being explicitly taught, they can develop a routine and prepare for using their camouflaging strategy as needed. Of course, this learning process is never a one-and-done approach. All of the participants shared that they continually learn how to improve their camouflaging. Moving on to theme 4, many camouflaging techniques were discussed by the participants, including the ones that are most discussed, which are on the slide here. All of the participants shared that they will use different camouflaging techniques for different interactions. Some may look like they're hiding certain parts of themselves, while others may look like they're being overtly social because they're adding to their social behaviors. Either way, the camouflaging techniques that they decide to use in that scenario are determined by the environment and how much energy they have. The final theme regarding research question 1 is the relationships between camouflaging and navigating autistic identity. First and foremost, all of the participants shared that autism is central to their identity and they feel more accepted around neurodiverse people. One important finding that one participant shared is that full acceptance of autism is a societal challenge that must be addressed. Khalifa et al. In 2020 highlight that societies are making strides in improving autistic experiences, but there's still a lot of work left to be done. Excuse me. And when autism is fully accepted, the participants shared that camouflaging will reduce gradually. The reduction of camouflaging is both an attempt to become more aligned with their autistic identity, but it can also be a way to avoid the negative impacts that camouflaging could potentially bring. And we'll discuss those next. Now, moving on to the findings from research question 2, there were 4 impacts of health that arose, including those on the physical quality of life, the psychological quality of life, the social quality of life, and the environmental quality of life. Starting with the physical impacts of camouflaging, they were pretty much summed up quite well by Cam3, stating, I feel like I stim a lot. If I stim a lot and I'm healthy and I feel good, I don't eat as much. But if I'm having to mask or camouflage for a very long period of time, I feel like I eat a lot more the next day, or I even eat a lot during it because I'm trying to manage my anxiety levels. All in all, the 5 participants felt that camouflaging led to feelings of exhaustion, sleeping more, eating more, and in some cases, neck pain due to the stress of camouflaging, but also just trying to maintain some sort of uncomfortable posture or position. Now, regarding the psychological impacts, the participants shared that they get more migraines, feel more stressed, anxious, and depressed after camouflaging for a long period of time. Cam 2 even went on to explicitly state that camouflaging does take a big toll on her mental health. For social quality of life impacts, participants felt that camouflaging benefited them in developing relationships with others. However, they mentioned that sometimes they feel these relationships are not entirely as meaningful as they could be because the participants are hiding the identity they want to share, but their friends have no idea. So as Cam 7 shared, when she speaks of her friends and how much they know about her, she says, "You don't know who I am, you only know who I want you to see." In social and romantic relationships, camouflaging is often done at the beginning to get a sense of how others would feel if they did disclose their autism later on. However, in some instances, the participants decided, just not to camouflage and disclose their autism right up front in order to, as Cam 11 said, weed out the jerks. Regarding the environmental quality of life impacts of camouflaging, the participants shared that camouflaging was beneficial to them as it helped them to get jobs and achieve academically. However, all of the participants felt that they had to camouflage. They felt the need that they felt that they had to camouflage in order to keep their job, indicating that they're just working in a really unaccepting environment. So the overall conclusion for the 2 research questions is there's kind of 2 here. First, camouflaging experiences are complex. They will differ based on who you talk to, and individual camouflaging experiences are adaptive to the environment they're in. They're variable over time, and they're dependent on the degrees of internal and external acceptance of autism that they experience. And then the second overall conclusion is that camouflaging does have a lot of benefits, yet as one participant shared, it can come at a price. So in this slide, I've created a model that I believe encapsulates the study's essence, and it's based off of Palmer's community of truth model. In the middle, aligning with IPA and community-based research, is the autistic camouflaging experience. Along the edges of the model are domains in the individual's life. And these are just examples. These could change based on who you're speaking to. So this model demonstrates 3 points. The first point, the outer sections of the model impact the autistic camouflaging experience of individuals, whether that be on how the phenomenon of camouflaging is defined, why they choose to camouflage or not, how they learn to camouflage, the camouflaging techniques they use, and how they can navigate their autistic identity with those outer sections. Additionally, each outer section of the model will play a role in the impact camouflaging has on their individual quality of life. The second point this model makes is that the autistic camouflaging experience informs those in the outer sections of the model. This is the pinnacle of IPA research and why I chose to do this study. Not enough people are aware of the autistic experience of camouflaging in women, myself included. By sharing the experience of the participants, our understanding of camouflaging becomes more comprehensive, and we can create targeted interventions that can support the well-being of autistic women. And the final point this model makes is that the experience of camouflaging and the impacts camouflaging will have on these autistic individuals will change over time. This may change by the relationships they develop, either social or romantic, work and school becoming more or less accommodating, or academic literature publishing more inclusive perspectives of the autistic experience. And that's just to name a few. So finally, the implications of this study are threefold. First, we hope this research and other articles like it will highlight the male bias in autism research and advocate for more diversity in the autistic voice represented. Second, we hope that the results of this study, we can have community services, policymakers, educators, and psychologists, and others in the community as well, can learn how to address camouflaging impacts and find ways to improve the autistic quality of life in their own way, whatever they can do. to support that initiative. And finally, we hope this study will be a catalyst for other autistic individuals to share their stories and participate in research as a partnership like the 4 Autistic Women did in this study, just for the sake of having their voices be included in the research, but also knowing that their experiences are valuable for others to be aware of and to listen to. So I'd like to thank you for that presentation, for listening and coming. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute. I'm not sure, Laura, if there's a process.